turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the field of human conflict was so much over by so many.
On air-to-ground missions, they bombed bridges behind the Normandy beachhead on the 6th of June itself. But here comes the Fury. To return to the Thunderbolt, it was incidentally the most numerous American fighter of all during World War II. Nearly 15,700 of them were built, and they served in all theatres, not just Europe. Arm of the Royal Navy, however, it was developed for them as the Sea Fury, as a new carrier-borne fighter and fighter bomber. While it didn't see any World War II service, in the Korean War of 1952-53, it really proved its worth. Famously, the sole British air-to-air victory of the Korean conflict was scored by a fleet air arm, Sea Fury, against a communist-flown MiG-15. Is in the colours of the prototype Mark 10 Sea Fury, hence this unusual scheme with, look at it, trailing wingtip vortices as it manoeuvres in the damp air. Yes, the upper surfaces are camouflaged, the undersurface is yellow, and it's got a yellow P for prototype in a circle on the rear fuselage sides. An ex-Iraqi Fury, a Fury ISS, Iraqi single-seat. The air arms of Iraq and Pakistan both flew non-navalised versions. now coming for what will be its last pass.
In 5 seconds from now. And I believe we have 13 other Spitfires, but there goes the Mark 40. Post for number 41 Squadron colours. So we do have the Griffin engine Seafire from Navy Wing. Friday, the 15th of September. It always marks a crucial date in the battle, that on which the Luftwaffe mounted its heaviest raids on London yet, of that summer of 1940, and on which the RAF responded in force. Figures show there were 56 Luftwaffe aircraft lost on that date to 28 from the Royal Air Force. It led, 2 days later, to Hitler postponing his invasion plans. Jamaica, Newfoundland and Northern Rhodesia, as well as the United Kingdom. All were recognised by Prime Minister Winston Churchill when he paid tribute in the House of Commons on the 20th of August, 1940.
The gratitude of every home in our island, in our empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the field of human conflict was so much hope by so many.
and then
Today, the Avro Lancaster 1, accompanied by a pair of Supermarine Spitfires, the one nearest to us on that initial pass, the only airworthy Spitfire currently remaining which actually fought in the Battle of Britain, the flight Mark 2A, serial P7350. And as the Lancaster clears, shortly to return to us, its soon-to-be companion rolls from the hard runway. The B-17. Soon to see one of the most special formations mounted at IWM Duxford for many a year.
development of the earlier Avro-Manchester twin, which was a late 1930s design with its maiden flight in January 1942. It helps explain how their capabilities varied, and in particular the different sizes of the two aircraft's bomb bays. And we're going to see that compared on this next pass with bomb doors open on both the B-17 and the Lancaster. By day, the Lancaster somewhat lower at night. It's difficult to define a typical bomb load for each of these aircraft, but a roughly normal bomb load for a B-17 would be in the region of 6,000 pounds. That's around 2,720 kilos. The Lancaster, by contrast, double that, circa 12,000 pounds. And the Lancaster was able to carry the largest bomb load of any bomber that was used in the European theatre, including specialised weapons such as the Upkeep bouncing bomb for the Dams raid and the 22,000-pound Grand Slam when the bomb bay doors were modified. The B-17's bomb bay may be shorter than that of the Lancaster, but it's much wider and deeper. Now for its solo display in remembrance of the 8th Air Force as ever, B-17 Sally B. This privately owned and most incredibly potent flying memorial to the United States airmen who served in particular in East Anglia during the Second World War carries still on one side of its nose the nose art of Memphis Belle, the 91st Bomb Group aircraft that achieved that notable milestone 80 years ago, and which was of course the subject of William Wyler's wartime documentary chronicling the progress towards that epoch-making mission. Of Sally B's display, which has been captained today by Dutchman Peter Kuipers with co-pilot Paul Schluer, is always dedicated to the members of the Sally B supporters camp. And it takes place with smoke on two of the engines to represent the state in which many B-17s returned from wartime operations.
Yes, I know what it's like in the aviation world. We're on more on the other side of the advanced we're never going to get round to that. It's coming here to the IWM stores or something. It's certification or something. Yes. Anything else back to
Peter Kuipers touching down with B-17 Flying Fortress Sally B. aircraft was returned to its manufacturer for significant repairs.
That's Jet's job. Yeah.
Thus its career during the Battle of Britain was a short one indeed. And it's also possible, according to more recent evidence, that the Bf-110 that was claimed as shot down by that aeroplane might even have made it back to base. But nonetheless...
090 degrees at 9.
Our two fighters that are shortly going to be representing the Battle of France period getting airborne together. The Curtiss P-36. But now rolling for takeoff, first to the next on today's programme. And a very significant one in British aviation history. The Havilland Vampire FB6.
That's for information, Swordfish. Swordfish, button.
Very interesting. Of course, de Havilland had a great deal of experience building wooden airframes, the Mosquito most famously. And the structure of the Vampire is a mixture of wood and metal. The fuselage pod up front has a balsa wood core and layers of birch veneer inside and outside. The wings, the tail booms and the tail, meanwhile, are all metal. And the early Vampires were very simple day fighters, and they arrived in RAF service just too late to see action in World War II. Unlike the Russian Come the early post-war years, the list of firsts wrapped up by Vampires in the early part of the jet age was quite incredible. It was a Mark I Vampire that the late and renowned naval test pilot Captain Eric Brown made the first ever aircraft carrier landing and takeoff in a jet aeroplane. That was aboard HMS Ocean in early December 1945, and Vampires duly became the Royal Navy's first jets. Then fast forward to 1948, some Mark III Vampires from number 54 Squadron of the Royal Air Force. Notched up the remarkable feat of becoming the first jet aircraft ever to cross the Atlantic. Once they were in North America, they made a variety of very well received air displays at events around the continent. The design was developed beyond its day fighter roots. The FB-5 was the first fighter bomber model. It was introduced in 1949. It served extensively with RAF units in Germany, for example, in the Middle East and the Far East. This is an FB-6, as used by the fact that the Royal Norwegian Air Force used the Vampire. Took on a small number of Vampires that were built directly in the UK, and then they produced 150 FB-52 fighter bombers under license by Fiat and Macchi. For that purpose, but here comes the single-seater into land. demonstrated in his use of by Martin Tesley, the Vampire FB6. Under the call sign Paris formation, and this is because they take us back to a later point in
Duxford Electra, radio check, and taxi please. Electra, availability 5, and sorry, what was the last bit? Taxi please. Electra, rushing, taxi, your description. Course of these, Swordfish, about taxi.
Alongside two homegrown products, the Morin-Saunier MS-406 and the Duatin D520, and the first Allied aerial victories on the Western Front of World War II involved French Curtiss Hawks. That was on the 8th of September 1939, and they shot down a pair of Luftwaffe Messerschmitt DS-109s. So this was really France's best fighter of that period, and 7 Hawk 75 pilots from the Armée de l'Air achieved ace status. Tactically, the Model 75 was very successful on the export market, but changing allegiances meant the histories of some of the aircraft became quite complicated. Finland took quite a few on strength, a mix of ex-French examples and some crated Hawk 75 that had been destined for Norway and captured by the Germans, and they then saw extensive use against the Soviets. Meanwhile, after France fell in 1940, some of the surviving French Hawks fled to North Africa, where they formed part of the air force of the German-supporting Vichy France. Then when the Allies gained victory in North Africa, they ended up back in the hands of the Free French again. And that's true of this Hawk 75, a veteran on the Battle of France during World War II. Some of the French Hawks ended up back in metropolitan France during 1944 after the Allied invasion on D-Day, and they were painted with invasion stripes. They were flown presumably as hack aircraft by commanders of some of the Free French fighter groups, and also possibly as part of a unit from By contrast with the Americans, the P... On that date, a pilot from the 46th Pursuit Squadron, one Second Lieutenant Philip Rasmussen, was awakened in his barracks at Wheeler Field, Hawaii, by a sound of aircraft overhead. He saw the Japanese attack out of his window. He attached a .45 caliber pistol to his pajamas, went to his aeroplane. When he reached the airfield, he found many aircraft had been destroyed, but a couple of P-36s and 4 P-40Cs had already launched. Rasmussen and 3 other pilots from the 46th Pursuit Squadron took off in their P-36As to engage Japanese They shot down 2 Vals and 1 Zero for the loss of 1 P-36 and nearly the loss of Rasmussen's, which managed to land back at Wheeler Field despite the fact that it had 500 bullet holes in it. fighter in many ways, the Model 75.
Surface
It was very effective,
left
especially by
runway.
the standards
Surface
of the early part of World War II. The big Wellingtons of the RAF. The French Hawk units of the Armée de l'air de l'Armistice, as the Vichy French air arm was known, were decimated at the hands of US Navy Wildcats, in particular during Operation Torch, the Allied landings in North Africa in late 1942. Nonetheless, some, as I said, did survive to tell the tale, including this one, which served with the Free.
Surface 1, turning final, geared up, full stop, 06 ground.
In fact, it served with the modern French Air Force, the Armée de l'air.
Now we have 2 minutes and 11
49 was a
seconds.
training unit.
Electra's at hold and change the display. Electra, roger. Catalina at hold, change display. Catalina. Surface 2, commencing last pass, hold on wing, last pass, hold on wing.
Final pass for the H-75 coming up. P-36C just landed in the hands of the Norwegian Rolf Mayo. The aircraft part of the superb fleet based here with the fighter collection, which has had many Curtiss fighters pass through its hands over the years. And I've often said this, but it's really thanks in no small part to TFC that I think the Hawk 75A1 then coming in to land. Very appropriately given that aircraft's heritage. It was flown today by a Frenchman in the form of Patrice Marchasson.
Electra's ready to roll, taxi towards the heart.
Programs over the winter, and even more from the archive. So if you want to, when you get home, watch this all over again on Planes TV, and give Planes TV a try for just £10.
Swordfish lining up 24 left.
Planes.com. Where in the world you're watching. Now, rolling off the hard runway, an aircraft that's been one of the stars of this season here at Duxford and elsewhere, the simply beautiful Lockheed 12A Electra Junior.
They only got 2 on board it this year. Oh, he's using
Of infamy 83 years ago, this coming week, when its hangar at Heston Airport, a German parachute mine drops on it. That'll be back with us as the next act. But here goes the Battle of the Atlantic pair that'll be rejoining us shortly. First off, we've got the Catalina.
Number 04010.
And next off, the Swordfish.
What was the original name of the Swordfish, Stuart?
This is the Lockheed 12A Electra Junior. The British end was handled by the Secret Intelligence Service. And this particular Lockheed 12A was shipped to the UK aboard the SS Aquitania and reassembled by Cunliffe-Owen Aircraft at Eastleigh in Southampton in May 1939.
Nimrod, Duxford information, good afternoon. Taxi holder Charlie for 063010.
And by Airwork at Heston, they installed carbon belly camera, so that camera's lens wouldn't fog up.
Shelby 29 Juno helicopter with 3 persons on board. I'm currently Westland, Cambridge, following the AM11 south and looking to join the requesting runway
Character by the name of Sydney
Shawbury 29 runway 06 right hand, QFE 1009.
And also by his co-pilot before war broke out. It photographed naval objectives in North German coastal areas. Associated with Sydney Cotton's cover story, but there are no records of it having carried out photography on those occasions, nor on a visit to a major international air rally in Frankfurt. Its last visit to Berlin before war broke out was connected with an abortive attempt to fly Hermann Goering to Britain for peace talks.
At Shawbury 29,
hostilities commenced, of course it wasn't possible for this aircraft to fly in such hostile airspace.
from the north, basically a right base of 4, and the report established you've been landing at that eastern end of the airfield outside ARC, if you're familiar. Joining right base 24, landed this side of the airfield, not familiar with ARC, unfortunately.
RAF as a wing commander, and this aircraft also joined the RAF.
The landing site is short of the grass. If you can see the duck-egg green hangar there with a couple of Bowsers and a couple of Cessnas parked outside. I can see some umbrellas and a cafe. Just sort of on.
Nimrod 07070.
Just by the Bowsers now. Do you want me to actually land on here? Hey, folks.
The interior of this aircraft is as gorgeous looking as the exterior. Again, a superb job done on this, down to the ground. The nose acts as a vast air brake and brings it to a halt in a very short distance. Wheeling it.
Display 132.90. 132.905. 132.905.
Lockheed 12A.
Quick set time lining at 1 hard, 1 grass to the park. Can you tell me when the Electra's clear the hard? Thanks for anything. Sorry. FDD, fish head, say again.
Biplane type from the interwar fleet air arm of the Royal Navy, the Hawk and Nimrod.
Right, they weren't only looking for where the submarines were, but they were actually attacking them. They would drop mines on them, and they were very successful in that respect too. The Germans actually lost a huge number of submarines. There was a period, a really dark period for the
French forces by
Catalina number 209 squadron flying Northern Ireland. And despite gunfire from the Bismarck, it was shadowed by that and another Catalina from number 240 squadron until naval vessels were back in the vicinity, including HMS Ark Royal and its Swordfish, which I suspect we'll come on to.
Yes, that's right. Team of owners, and the Catalina that we are looking at here has one or two modifications. The fuselage dome-shaped windows are oversized. That was because of
Duxford, and it was John Harmsworth and Philip Pettit who've flew the Catalinas there, but back come the biplanes. Not a formation we've seen before of the Swordfish and the Nimrod. Was long gone from frontline service by the time World War II broke out. The Swordfish, however, anything but followed.
By today's
It needs major engine work.
That's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd think it would be easy to shoot from this height.
And very, very manoeuvrable at those speeds with an extremely small turning radius. We mentioned the attack on the Bismarck in which Catalinas were involved. It was Swordfish from HMS Ark Royal, which put a torpedo through the Bismarck's steering gear and enabled the home fleet to...
radio formation, check it. That one. That two. Lancaster, Duxford, radio formation is changing to display. Radio, roger.
The last shot of the action, almost.
But in mentioning the heroism of Swordfish crews, you of course cannot ignore one of the less successful exploits, the Channel Dash. 6 Swordfish attempted to stop the German ships, the Prince Eugen and the Scharnhorst, in the Gneisenau of February 1942 from going up the English Channel from Brest to their home port at Wilhelmshaven. Those ships were incredibly heavily defended. All 6 of the Swordfish were shot down, but they nonetheless pressed home their attacks against incredibly heavy fire, and Lieutenant Commander Eugene Esmond,
Mercury 2, Lysander taxiing from
the Swordfish involved, was a posthumous recipient
Mercury
of
2,
the
Duxford
Victoria
information,
Cross.
good afternoon, taxi Charlie 06 QFE 1009.
Protection of the Atlantic and Arctic convoys, such a strong role for the Swordfish, often flying off MAC ships, merchant aircraft carriers, which were oilers or grain ships, which would have a flat deck welded on top of the hull, a very small flight deck, from the like of which it had never been intended that Swordfish would ever operate, yet they did so, and they did so superbly.
And with limited instrumentation. Today we've got, obviously, GPS and all that kind of stuff.
Radio formation 5 seconds.
We're going to be flying these aircraft.
Lightly laden, and when fitted with the underslung torpedo, just 82 knots.
It looks so vulnerable, doesn't it? Lumbering. Imagine yourself in that position. Once you've taken off, you'd wonder if you'd ever find the aircraft carrier again.
A rear crewman saluting us all as the aircraft passes by there.
Swordfish positioning for Lancaster.
Operating from the MAC ships, the Swordfish could achieve 4 hours of
Duxford display for the Nimrod. Can you call me when the Swordfish is on short final?
as our
FTD, roger.
radial engine formation gets air.
Swordfish left hand.
And the Swordfish flying by for the final time above.
With a jaunty waggle of the wings.
During World War II, Swordfish managed to sink 20...
Swordfish positioning, final from the exit.
got here is what Hawker came up with when the Fleet Air Arm needed a faster and more capable carrier-borne fighter to replace the old Fairey Flycatcher. The origins of this design are in the land-based Fury, but really it's a very much different machine. It's got greater span wings, and crucially for its carrier-borne role, it has flotation boxes in the wings and fuselage.
Mercury check. Mercury 2. Radically.
Just 92 Nimrods were produced. The first 42 were Mark 1s like this. They entered service in late 1931. The Mark II, of which we've also got an example based here at Duxford with the historic aircraft collection. Quite different, with arrestor gear, swept-back wings, a different cooling system, a tail wheel rather than a tail skid, a gas start system, and a more powerful version of the glorious sounding Rolls-Royce Kestrel engine. Glorious. It's interesting to note that the Fleet Air Arm organisationally at that point of the 1930s was part of the RAF still. It wasn't transferred to Admiralty control until 1939. Armament comes in the form of a couple of forward-firing Vickers machine guns. It could also carry 4 20-pound bombs on underwing positions. It was, as I said, thoroughly outmoded by the time World War II broke out. Just 18 Nimrods were left on the Fleet Air Arm strength at that point. The last one in use was flown on weather check duties by 753 Squadron as late as 1942. Final pass coming up for the Fighter Collection's Nimrod. This is just the third production Nimrod to have been built at the Hawker plant at Kingston upon Thames in Surrey. It was delivered to what was then 408.
Nimrod turning final to the ground.
Embarked in HMS.
Radio formation close up. We're 150 knots.
Landing on. Nimrod. We're going to move on now to another formation that's never been seen before. Left, our radial formation, with the Anson C-19 of the Shuttleworth collection leading a pair of Gloucester Gladiators, one each from Shuttleworth and from the Fighter collection.
Radials, braking, go. Combat formation, Duxford 5, taxi Charlie 06 security 1009.
1009, a taxi Charlie for 06, comrade.
When the Anson first appeared, it made its maiden flight in March 1935. This was a very advanced machine indeed, simply by being a monoplane with a retractable undercarriage. And in fact, it was the first RAF aircraft ever to use that configuration. What about the name? Well, because this aircraft was to see a maritime-related role, there was a maritime link there. It was called Anson, after Admiral of the Fleet George Anson, who was First Lord of the Admiralty during the 7 Years' War in the mid-18th century. The war broke out in September 1939. And one of those squadrons, number 500 squadron, stationed at Duxford, was involved in some...
352, Mustang, Quarry, left base 06.
On the 5th of September 1939, just 2 days after the war was declared, 1960. So it's a little bit out of time.
Gladiators.
With it, but it represents those early Ansons.
Gladiators FPV, commence display.
Gladiators.
That were active on the front line
display,
at the same time
display when ready.
as the Gloucester Gladiators were together.
Straight short final with again.
Dodge Bailey was flying the Shuttleworth Anson there with Bob Morecambe alongside.
Second. 2, 3.
Show type 2 Mustang at Echo for parking.
Mustang, Duxford, continue from Echo round to previous parking spot.
To adopt a Gladiator.
I understand you're requiring fairly swift refill.
For the Thunderbolt when it's back, yeah.
Sorry, just for the Thunderbolt, not for you, is that right?
Just the Thunderbolt.
Being quiet for some kind of
Changed the
opportunity.
wing-strut configuration also to reduce airframe drag, revised the undercarriage, gave it this enclosed cockpit. Alas, as a fighting machine, by the time World War II broke out, this aircraft, rather like the Swordfish we've just seen, was somewhat behind the times.
Gladiators 2, right at there.
There were 4 squadrons of Gladiators in the RAF upon the outbreak of war. 2 of them were sent to France in 1939. All of their aircraft were lost within just 10 days of coming up against German opposition in May 1940. With the loss of all 10 of its surviving Gladiators and 8 of their pilots.
Display showtime 1, I'm going to head position towards left base and I'll land on the hard after the Gladiators land on the grass. Gladiator turning downwind to land on the grass.
But they were used in many other theatres, in Greece, in North and East Africa, Middle East and Malta. And they formed part of Britain's defences during the Battle of Britain. Its markings those of a number 73 squadron aircraft flown by a New Zealander named Cobber Kane at the 1937 RAF Hendon display. Kane was the first RAF, or indeed Allied, ace of World War II, the first Distinguished Flying Cross recipient within fighter command due to his actions in the Battle of Collections example. Shows us what this machine can do aerobatically.
Gladiator 2 and last one.
Gladiator FPV weapon.
TFC's Gladiator, settling back onto the grass. Stu Goldspink, flying it in the disabilities.
SPD for the comrades, is that all the landing traffic on the hard?
Affirmative, you clear the lineup.
They're lining up.
Get airborne off the hard, and then we'll be bringing back the Lysanders.
Show 10 to Duxford, Roger. Continue to parking and refuel will be with you very shortly. Okay.
The Yak 18T leading off the two Yak 52s. Meantime, here come the two Westland Lysanders. The first monoplane type this to serve with RAF Army Cooperation Command. It replaced two other of the Hawker biplane family, of which we saw a member in the form of the Nimrod earlier on, namely the Audax and the Hector. And it was designed to meet a very specific specification from 1934. Westland put forward this very high-wing monoplane with enormous undercarriage spats, a very large amount of cockpit glazing for both the pilot and the rear seat observer, and a pair of forward-firing .383-inch machine guns also in the spats. The observer could also have one in the rear. The engine is the Bristol Mercury 9-cylinder radial. And this aircraft entered service with the RAF in 1938. The following year, 4 squadrons of Lysanders were deployed to France to do artillery spotting and reconnaissance missions. One of them used its guns that following year.
Go! Rolling right. Visual, one going low.
During the Battle of Britain, Lysanders of those Army Cooperation squadrons were assigned to the Provisional Air-Sea Rescue Service that the RAF was developing, in which, frankly, it developed rather late. But Colin, as we see represented by the black painted Lysander leading this formation, the Shuttlewood collection, it was in another more clandestine role with this aircraft perhaps really won its spurs in wartime.
Absolutely right. These aircraft were used by the SOE, or to deliver SOE agents, the Secret Operations Executive, and ours as well.
Yeah, both pilots and special duty Lysander, a bit of this big fuel tank and the access ladder that are on the Shuttlewood one here, came from numbers 138 and 161 Squadron Station, not too far away from here at Newmarket and at Tempestford, and they completed most of the structure is made from riveted alloy panels. Only the wing centre section is conventional all metal. Because it was designed for the training role, even if for an airline, it was decided to make it fully aerobatic. That's the aircraft leading the trio. Two other more common the F-52.
360.
They all share the same engine, the 9-cylinder Vedenev M14 with about 360 horsepower, which powered all sorts of Soviet-era designs. And again, ruggedness and simplicity really to the fore with the Yak 52. When they come round on this orbit, you'll see that the main wheels on both of the outboard aircraft in this formation haven't retracted fully. That is deliberate, because it was deemed a good thing if a ham-fisted student pilot forgot to lower the undercarriage.
Holding the back.
And it was also considered a good thing to give the F-52 pneumatic systems rather than anything more advanced to operate the engine starter, the flaps, the brakes and the undercarriage.
Line of stern, go 2, 3.
From their initial fixed formation, they're now changing into line astern. The
Roll!
team leader, Phil Harvey, calling them all up into a roll.
Line astern, 2, 3.
Give it a smile.
Easy, all aboard. Roger, close up for line astern.
Phil calling for rolling left, and the others follow. He calls climbing, and they will again do likewise.
Right turn, echelon right, go. Duxford from Fury to taxi. It's not thunder anymore, the P-47's got an issue, so Fury solo. Fury, Duxford, taxi Charlie 06, QFE 1009er.
This team has got a part of its training here, and this is one of the roles that Duxford on a day-to-day basis is delighted to be able to fulfil. Quite a number of relatively newly fledged display pilots and new display acts have trained here in recent years.
Increasing the bank.
There's always plenty of expertise on hand as well from the resident warbird display community. And some of the smaller flying day events here have provided a good, relaxed sort of atmosphere in which teams like the Flying Comrades have been able to earn their spurs on the display circuit before moving up to some of the larger events. And indeed, all three of these pilots have flown various other historic aircraft. Duxford.
Okay, tighten up. Rolling out.
Rolling out onto the B-axis.
Smoke on.
The smoke comes on with the two Yak 52s.
Smoke. Come by. Brake. Brake. Go.
And there's the final break by the 2023 Flying Comrades. The Fury takes off, does its solo display and lands. Then about a half-hour intermission. The red arrows will be on at 5 o'clock, and then we'll be seeing, slightly delayed, the big wing finale of Spitfires and Hurricanes, which will be getting underway from about 5:30.
Fury after the third lap, Yak on crossing the ground to hold and line up on the half. Second. 2, 3. Information, comrades taxiing back. Comrades Duxford information, taxi back to stop.
There goes the Fury into the air, shortly positioned for its display, and it'll be back very soon. Standing for Iraqi single seat, because this is the ex-Iraqi Air Force Fury.
Idle.
Someone started it originally. Gone through about half a dozen different hands and stores since then.
The design has its roots in the RAF need for a replacement for the Hawker Tempest II, and it, to begin with, was known as the Tempest Light Fighter, but when World War II ended, the RAF no longer had a requirement. Nonetheless, Hawker continued development of it as the Sea Fury for the Fleet Air Arm, and it came into service in October 1945. Like a lot of new aircraft that enjoy great success in service, the Sea Fury had its troubles early on. In fact, initially it wasn't felt suitable for carrier-borne operations, but that was all ironed out. And the Sea Fury began to replace the Supermarine Seafire, one of which we'll be seeing in our finale today, as the main carrier-borne fighter of the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy, and then production switched to the FB-11, the fighter-bomber version. That was the one that saw action in the Korean War of 1950 to 53. The lovely colour scheme on this aircraft represents the prototype Mark 10 Sea Fury. And the ever so harmonious sound of the Bristol Centaurus 18, radial engine 2,500 horsepower at this aircraft's disposal, top speed of 460 miles an hour. No wonder Steve Jones into land there with the Fury. And now, as I say, make your way up to the airspace hangar if you'd like to watch the Concorde nose droop while we have an intermission in the programme. I'm just going to get the latest update from the Flying Display Director, and we'll come back to you very soon as well. It's the Renaults! Elevation 200 to 300 feet from left wingtip to right wingtip, and then roll to the left. People who have maybe seen us this year will see that. Unfortunately, here at Duxford we are restricted by airspace, and therefore we can only do a rolling show. However, you'll still see some great formation flying involving all 8 aircraft. Red 1 bringing the team around to left is squad leader Tom Bode. He is in his 3rd and final year as team leader. He's also been the synchro leader in 2017. He's also flown the Typhoon operationally. He's a qualified flying instructor on the Hawk, T-Mark II and Takano, where he was the Takano display pilot in 2010. Get your cameras ready as the smoke comes on for the 8-hour present. As he rolls the T-Mark, get your cameras ready. Watch for the dynamic shape change. As Red 7-8 perform a roll back and change the shape from 8-hour into Vixen. Right now. 2 on the right side of the Red 1 Odyssey. It's flight attendant Rich the Warfare. Rich is in his 30th year in the team, an extremely experienced pilot, having flown operations on both the Harrier and the Typhoon, as well as being a qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark II. There are 10 pilots on the team. You have Red 1 through 8 in the display before you. Myself, Red 10, 4 Tornado GR4 pilots and 4 qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark II. And of course there's Red 11, Officer Commanding Rafa, Red Commander and Collins. He was my predecessor as Red 10.
He's also a former Tornado GR4 pilot, and he's also flown the F-111 while on exchange with the Royal Australian Air Force. You can see now that Reds 4 and 5 smoke, and they make their way to the rear of the formation. For those familiar with the red arrow shape, you'll know this as Apollo. As the smoke comes out, the team will reverse around the left to the first of our space-themed ships. For the Apollo presents.
Out, reversing, left, left. Holding there, thank you now, thank you.
On the left-hand side of Red 1 is Red 3. He's a former Typhoon pilot and qualified weapons instructor on the Typhoon. This means he would teach all weapon technical information and frontline tactics to the entire Typhoon force.
2, 3.
Reds 2 and 3 now smoke as the entire centre section make their way rearwards. And then you can see that puts Reds 4 and 5 even further back, making it even more difficult for them as we take all our formation references from Red 1 and not necessarily the aircraft that's closest in. And of course, being that far back, it's extremely difficult for 4 and 5 to see Red 1. This is Eagle, the second of our space-themed shapes. As the smoke comes on for the Eagle, present. That space plays an important part in all flights and Ollie's in the space with the team, a former Tornado GR4 pilot, and also a former qualified flying ship on the board Team Mark 2. And Ollie would like to give a shout out today to his mum, dad, Penny and Tony, his brother Jonathan, his wife Sarah, parents, and Barry, and his nephew Ben, who are here today at Duxford. The opposite number on the left-hand side is Red 5. That's Flight 10 Patrick Kershaw, known as Paddy. He was Red 3 last year. He's a former Tornado GR. He's also flying the Typhoon with 11 and 12 squadron RF Collinsville.
7.
You can now see Red 7 moving to the left and Red 8 moving to the right, putting all the odd numbers on the left-hand side and all the even numbers on the right-hand side. With Red 6 just nestled in just behind Red 1 in the stem. For the first of our big wings shaped, the smoke comes on, the team will reverse to left. For the Signet present.
Out, reversing, left, left. Holding there, thank you now, thank you. Right out, so far there, that's good.
Seven and 8 roll around the rest of the formation at the start of the Tornado. But of course, Red 1 doesn't want to make it too easy for the rest of the team, so watch for the colour change.
Hello, Sue. How are you? Oh, right, okay.
Right, now.
As the red and the blue come on, Red 1 sends the formation around in the front section of aircraft, you may be able to see those aircraft are flying with their airbags out. That's the small door at the base of the aircraft towards the rear. This means that section of aircraft are now flying with a higher throttle setting. Hannah from Edith braking first, followed by Hannah. Red 7 off to the right, Red 8 up over the top. You may have transmission, that's actually Red 6, giving the command to the right. And this allows him to communicate with the rest of Hannah without stepping on top of the voice commands from Red 1.
The Synchro pair now off to your left, off to your right. You've got red 7 off to the right, red 6 off to the left. And they, of course, are led by the Synchro pair. Red 6 off to our left-hand side is squadron leader James Turner, known as JT. JT is in his 4th and final year on the team. He's a former Typhoon pilot and instructor on the Typhoon, as well as being a qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark 1. Each aircraft now down only 100 feet from the airfield and current speed of 800 miles per hour. Each aircraft is flying at 360 degrees, in Turn is the call from Red 6 as both aircraft now turn hard, pulling up to 6G, away from the display line, looking to aim back towards the centre point as they complete the manoeuvre called Cyclone. Red 1 gathers the rest of Enid. They bend them around to the left, and underneath the aircraft you may be able to see a small tank. It looks like a fuel tank. However, that is actually the smoke pod. That smoke pod is capable of shooting for the world famous Synchro Rolling Heart. Spears the heart. And of course it would be remiss of the Red Arrows to not dedicate their days or the entire weekend for like smoke trail in the sky in the Python.
Thank you. Now.
You know, the aerospace is officially closed.
Thank
you. Why can't they display on time? Well, the fact is, the display time was altered.
As I said earlier, there are 10 pilots on the Six coming in from the right, smoking blue. They're going to close speed of over 800 to 850 miles an hour. They'll pass within only 30 feet. Each aircraft goes to 360 meters over the wall.
Well, they're going to do one. Yeah. All right, thanks.
Finished off by 4 all the way back to Red 5 as they swing round to the left in the Helix.
Easing up.
For the coronation, present.
Hello.
The call is Red 7 8, roll around the smoke, Smoking red is Red 8, Flight Lieutenant David Simmons, known as Simo. Clear go is the call as Reds 4 and 5 roll around the outside of formation. The hardest maneuvers for on the rest of the formation, leaving the infinity symbol in the sky for the infinity break. However, Duxford, it's been an honour and a pleasure. Please put your hands together for the 2023 Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team. It's the Red Arrow!
242 and 310 Czechoslovak squadrons on Hurricanes, number 19 squadron on Spitfires. That was the day the German tactics moved away from attacks on Britain's defences and onto London. The big wing was directed by number 11 group's controllers to patrol over North Weald in Essex. It arrived late, having claimed 11 aircraft destroyed elsewhere. That was the first of the big wing's operations. The debate, of course, as to the effectiveness of the Arian concept or otherwise still rages to this day. But there's no doubting its indelible part in the history of RAF Duxford.
Rewarded victory, if we call it that, in the Battle of Britain by sacking the commanding officers. It's remarkable.
That 2-seater got shook away today, isn't it?
Those of you down near the control tower will note that only now are we firing the free main body of Spitfires and Hurricanes, because we will be sending the absolutely gorgeous red and silver Mark 14 from aerial speed icon.
And this big wing really is a Duxford signature act, if we can call it that.
It is all found in 1940.
So the total number of Spitfires and Hurricanes is like 14 today, or is it 4,000?
In 5 seconds from now. I believe we have 13 other Spitfires, but there goes the Mark 14. Post-war number 41 squadron colours. So we do have the Griffin engine Seafire from Navy Wing.
Then of course it's off on the screen. It's got about 15 speakers. Nimrod doing it one year, and that was with the little Nimrod,
Battle of Britain Day, the 15th of September. It always marks a crucial date in the battle, that on which the Luftwaffe mounted its heaviest raids on London yet, of that summer of 1940, and on which the RAF responded in force. Figures show there were 56 Luftwaffe aircraft lost on that date to 28 from the Royal Air Force. It led, 2 days later, to Hitler postponing his invasion plan. Barbados, Jamaica, Newfoundland and Northern Rhodesia, as well as the United Kingdom. All were recognised by Prime Minister Winston Churchill when he paid tribute in the House of Commons on the 20th of August 1940.
The gratitude of every home in our life, in our empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the field of human conflict was so much hope by so many.
we pay tribute to an outstanding lady and a great aviator.
Edge gets in the way sometimes, doesn't it?
Not Father Lysander, isn't it? He's eating it.
Yeah, probably some mothballs in the soil, I guess. I'm digging away now. There's still a couple of Spitfires connected to Armour to Biggin Hill, scrawled away in the background. Yeah, exactly
That beautiful display to close the show was flown for us by Pete Kinsey.
said that what do you expect is Republic?
Luftwaffe Messerschmitt Bf 109s were typically flying flights of 2, which was known in German as a rotter, and they would come together in larger combinations. The 109 security was not that great. They were able to just manage a few minutes dogfighting over British soil. Its own qualities, not least as a very rugged, durable mount, able to withstand a lot of battle damage, which they didn't think the Mustang would be able to do. But as one of them, Huey Lamb, told me, we soon learned to love the Mustang, and it was with the P-51 that the 78th Fighter Group and others saw out the war, although the P-47 still had a huge role to play, especially in the air-to-ground role. Now running in to start their display, we have our formation of 3 North American P-51D Mustangs led by a 2-seat dual-control TF-51D variant in the colours of the Duxford-based 78th Fighter Group. Air Fighting Development Unit test pilot Len Thorne recalls how he made the comparison.
The Spit 9 could always outturn the Mustang. They had roughly the same altitude capability. They could both get to about 40,000 feet and still remain operationally viable. The Mustang could certainly outdive the Spit. I'm not quite sure about climbing. I think they were fairly close. Rate of roll, the Mustang, I think, had a slightly better rate of roll. But there was a big point in favour of the Mustang, of course, was its range. I'm told that recently somebody asked Chuck Yeager what he thought of the Spitfire. Did he ever fly one and what he thought of it? He said, yeah, very good airplane. It could do for 2 hours what a Mustang could do for 8.
Range of Spitfire squadrons routinely range into occupied Europe on fighter sweeps and bomber escorts. MH434 came into operational use as number 222 Natal Squadron, delivered to that unit by the great Vickers Supermarine test pilot. As our Hurricanes get airborne off the grass, was flown first by the great Vickers Supermarine test pilot Alex Henshaw, and then delivered to number 222 Squadron.
You can pick up that before. Okay.
Possessed a less impressive rate of climb. This was a design that has been described as being half a generation older than its supermarine combined combat aircraft. Very stable gun platform, and it was all of these qualities, as well as those of its pilots, and shot down or damaged 5 enemy aircraft. And the third of the Hurricanes on display as the Vampire gets airborne. P3717, owned by Jennifer Taylor. Number 253 Squadron flying from Kenley in Surrey. Also getting airborne, the Curtiss Hawk 75. A great deal, you could say, is characteristically de Havilland about this aircraft. The company, of course, had a lot of things. 1948, some RAF Vampire Mark IIIs became, by a small margin, the first jet aircraft in history to make a transatlantic flight. This, as I say, is FB6 fighter bomber. It's an ex-Swiss Air Force example, but having not retired its last Vampires until the early 1990s. Just as RAF Vampires served all over the world, these aircraft were sold to many different countries as well. 31 nations, in fact, used Vampires of one type or another at different times. And this one is a very international area after the armistice, as it was known, with Germany in June 1940, and it became part of the air arm of the German supporting Vichy French regime, the Armée de l'Air d'Armistice. A unit that fought against the German holdouts in the so-called Atlantic pockets around the French coast. Absolutely lovely aircraft to watch and to listen to with that Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp radial engine. by all accounts, it has excellent flying characteristics as well. Again, it's one of those fighters that could be deemed somewhat of an unsung hero of the combat of the early part of World War II, but a very effective weapon for that era. And certainly, I think, very comparable by all accounts to the likes of the Hurricane. Looks like the Swordfish is going to be next off. Reassembled at Eastleigh in Southampton by Cunliffe Owen Aircraft and flown again before it was converted for the reconnaissance role by Cunliffe Owen and by Airwork at Heston. And into this very innocuous looking aeroplane they fitted a variety of scopic imagery. It was a pretty advanced fit for the day. That was before the contributions of Cotton's assistant photographer, Patricia Martin, were factored in. She devised a teardrop window on the port cockpit side, which actually isn't included on the aircraft today, which could act as another handheld camera position. And then she had the idea of installing pipework to divert hot air from the engine exhausts across the lens of one of the two cameras in the aircraft's belly to stop it fogging up at high altitudes, and thus configured this very Catalina, of course, an iconic aircraft, the Distinguished Flying Cross. I would have thought he might have deserved a little more for that. Better aircraft. but this one has recently been put into the colours of the RAF Coningsby station flight from the early 1960s. It was owned for a long time by BAE Systems, but in early 2022 ownership passed on to the Shuttleworth Collection, who'd operate.
It's the same length, but it's short on the side, so it's 25. Same
the training role, it is fully aerobatic. In the Soviet tradition, it's a very simple, rugged construction. Fabric problem, it was designed like that because the feeling was that if a ham-fisted student pilot landed without remembering to lower the undercarriage, my co-commentator's pointing at himself for some reason here, I think we need to find out more about this, you still have some degree of wheel to cushion the impact. It also has the engine starter, the flaps, the brakes and the undercarriage, all operated by pneumatics rather than any more sophisticated mechanism. The team leader calling them into tail chase. This is Phil Hardisty in the Yak-18T. Phil and the number 2 pilot in the formation, Alex Luton, are both commercial airline pilots. And number 3 in the formation is our very own head of airfield here at IWM Duxford and display pilot and flying instructor, Tom Turner. And Phil's now calling them into roll. So here we see all 3 aircraft going aerobatic. Yak display teams. We started off with the Red Stars racing team doing their mock air races. That transitioned into the Aero Stars, who we had for very many seasons, giving absolutely fantastic displays, not least here, and many of their pilots have gone on to fly heavy metal warbirds in the shows. A couple of them are with us this weekend, in fact. And also the Yakovlev's team, which has only just disbanded. The Aero Stars disappeared a few years ago. There aren't so many of them around nowadays, so it's very nice to see the flying comrades here, now in line astern. Then is an aeroplane that we've already referred to in today's display, the P-47. And that's because of its status as one of the great US Army Air Forces fighters of World War II, and in particular, its role as an escort fighter. In fact, when the design first emerged from Republic Aviation in the United States, it was very different to what we see here. It was quite lightweight. They canned that prototype in favour of a much heavier, larger design from the same man. He being a Georgian emigre by the name of Alexander Kartvelli. And the result was an aeroplane that weighs 7 tons, which is an awful lot for a single-seat, single-engined fighter. And we shouldn't forget the Thunderbolt's significance as far as Duxford's concerned, because it equipped the 78th Fighter Group until P-51s came along in late 1944. In fact, on the evening of the 28th of August of that year, Major Joseph Myers was leading a flight of Thunderbolts from the 82nd Fighter Squadron, which was part of the 78th Fighter Group, over Belgium. He spotted what turned out to be a Messerschmitt Me-262 twin-jet fighter, and he scored the Allies' first ever kill over the brand new German jet. Fighter aviation engineer.